The social network begins with a breakup and ends with a friend request. Everything between those two moments is scale. Mark builds a platform used by millions, wins a fortune, defeats rivals, and transforms the internet. Yet the final image is not a victory. It is one man alone, refreshing a page, waiting to see whether one woman will accept him. The film's sharpest idea is that Facebook is not born from a pure desire to connect everyone. In this dramatized version of Mark Zuckerberg, it begins with the terror of being left outside. He can build a system that organizes other people's relationships. He can build a system that organizes other people, refreshing a page. Look at what Mark wants before he ever writes the site. He talks about Harvard's final clubs as if they are machines that manufacture a better life. They are exclusive, selective, and socially powerful. What matters is not simply joining a group. What matters is being chosen by people who can confirm that he belongs. Erica immediately understands the problem. Mark treats status like a mathematical proof. If the right club accepts him, then his value becomes undeniable. But human approval does not work like code. It cannot be forced, debugged, or guaranteed. The more desperately he tries to prove himself, the more obvious the insecurity becomes. After Erica rejects him, Mark creates Face Mash. The act is cruel, but psychologically it is also precise. Minutes earlier, he was the person being judged. Now he builds a system that lets him judge everyone else. Women become images. Attraction becomes a ranking. Rejection becomes traffic. The site gives him a temporary form of control. He no longer has to wait for another person to decide what he is worth. He can write the rules, set the choices, and watch the entire campus participate. Face Mash is not yet Facebook, but it establishes the emotional architecture. Transform vulnerability into data, then place yourself above the data. Facebook keeps that architecture and makes it elegant. The language changes from ranking to connection, but the promise is still access. Who knows whom? Who is single? Who belongs inside a particular school, club, or social circle? The film repeatedly presents the site as a digital version of the institutions Mark envies. At one point, he describes it like a final club where he and Eduardo are the presidents. That is the fantasy at the center of the invention. If the old gatekeepers will not let him in, he will build a larger gate and become the person who controls it. The excluded student becomes the architect of inclusion. The product itself turns emotional uncertainty into fields that can be displayed and updated. Relationship status becomes a menu. Friendship becomes a visible connection. Popularity becomes a number. These features are useful because they remove ambiguity from social life. They are also exactly what Mark wants for himself. He understands systems better than conversations. A profile can tell him whether someone is single. It cannot tell him whether that person trusts him. Facebook solves the easy part of connection, information. The film is interested in the harder part, the human risk that remains after all the information is available. Eduardo is essential because he gives Mark access before the site gives Mark power. He supplies the ranking algorithm, the first money, the Phoenix email list, and the credibility of a best friend who believes in him. Their friendship is not imaginary. The film gives them moments of genuine warmth, especially when Mark puts Eduardo's name on the masthead. But the relationship is unequal. Eduardo thinks they are building a company together. Mark increasingly treats people as components inside a system, useful while they help the system grow, replaceable when they slow it down. The friendship survives only while it behaves like infrastructure. The depositions make that problem visible. Almost the entire story is reconstructed through people fighting over who created what, who promised what, and who betrayed whom. Mark can control the code, but he cannot control the narrative once other people begin telling it. Every lawsuit is another rejected version of his own mythology. The Winklevoss twins say he stole access to their idea. Eduardo says he erased the only friend he had. Mark sits between those stories, answering with technical precision while avoiding the emotional meaning of the questions. He wants facts without responsibility while avoiding the emotional meaning of the questions. The confrontation with Erica at the club exposes how little success has changed him. Mark approaches her expecting the new website to rewrite the old humiliation. Instead, she remembers exactly what he did. She tells him that the internet is written in ink. His achievement cannot erase the person he became when he was angry. Mark does not apologize in a meaningful way. He turns around and orders the team to expand. That reaction is the pattern of the entire film. When intimacy becomes painful, he converts the pain into acceleration. Growth becomes a way to avoid standing still long enough to feel rejected. Then Sean Parker arrives and gives Mark a more seductive version of belonging. Sean understands that Mark does not only want a successful product, he wants mythology, danger, prestige, and a world that feels larger than Harvard. Sean talks about California, parties, famous founders, and a billion-dollar valuation. He even removes the word "the" from the company's name, as if stripping away the last trace of a college project. Eduardo offers partnership. Sean offers transformation. More importantly, he makes Mark feel like he has finally entered the room where the future is being decided, the room where the future is being decided. Sean is the final club in human form. That helps explain the betrayal of Eduardo. On paper, the dilution can be described as corporate warfare. Eduardo freezes the bank account, resists California, and makes decisions that threaten momentum. The film does not present him as flawless, but the emotional violence of the scene comes from something deeper than equity. Eduardo says he was Mark's only friend. He is not merely losing shares, he is discovering that friendship never protected him from being treated like an obstacle. Mark has recreated the logic of the final clubs. Someone gets admitted, someone gets excluded. And this time, Mark controls the door. The person who feared exclusion learns to survive by excluding first. There is an obvious counterargument. Perhaps rejection is not the engine at all. Perhaps the film's Mark is simply a brilliant, obsessive founder whose ambition would have produced Facebook with or without Erica. The site solves a real social problem. His technical instincts are extraordinary. Eduardo's caution is sometimes badly timed, and Sean's advice about scale is often correct. Reducing everything to a wounded ego would make the character smaller than the film allows. This is also why the analysis must stay inside Fincher and Sorkin's dramatization. It is not a diagnosis of the real Mark Zuckerberg, and the movie is not a documentary transcript. Still, ambition and rejection do not cancel each other. The film shows them feeding each other. Mark's genius gives him the ability to build at enormous speed. His humiliation gives the speed a direction. Each time a relationship fails, the company grows. After Erica rejects him, he creates FaceMash. After she rejects his attempt to impress her, he expands Facebook. When Eduardo resists the new direction, Mark replaces him with a structure that cannot argue back. The business decisions may be rational, but the editing repeatedly connects them to emotional wounds. The structure of the movie keeps returning to rejection because the structure is the argument. The first major scene shows Erica leaving. The final major scene shows Mark sending her a request. Between them, he creates a network that converts human relationships into visible signals: friend, single, connected, accepted. He can measure growth, users, ownership, and valuation. He cannot measure whether Erica will forgive him. That is why the refresh button matters. It is the one action in the film that gives him no control over the result. The founder becomes an ordinary user waiting for someone else to click. The junior lawyer tells Mark that he is not an asshole, only someone trying very hard to be one. It is a strangely compassionate judgment. She sees the performance beneath the cruelty. Mark has spent the film acting as though needing people is a weakness. He replaces apologies with products, uncertainty with code, and friendship with ownership percentages. Yet when everyone leaves the deposition room, the performance collapses. There is no board, no rival, no investor, and no audience. There is only a pending request. For the first time, the interface cannot protect him from what the answer might mean. That is the tragedy of the social network. Mark wins the world he thought would make rejection impossible. He becomes richer than the clubs that excluded him, and more influential than the people who dismissed him. But success cannot retroactively turn humiliation into love. The platform can connect millions, while its creator remains unable to make one honest connection on his own. He did not only want to build the future, the film suggests that he wanted to be chosen. And after everything he built, he is still waiting to get in. The final irony is that the interface Mark creates is built around voluntary acceptance. A request can be sent, but it cannot be approved by force. He can invite, signal, and refresh, the other person still decides. This is the one rule his own network preserves from real intimacy. Connection remains a choice. The system can make social life visible, but it cannot remove consent from it. In the last seconds, the most powerful person in Mark's world is not a founder, investor, or lawyer. It is Erica, absent from the room because only she can answer the question he cannot code.